Alexa, I need a drink. Much better. As you probably guessed from my intro, in this video I'm making a whiskey cabinet that's hidden inside of a whiskey barrel and lifts up to reveal all of my whiskey. But to do that, I need a whiskey barrel. And that's where my friends over at Cedar Ridge Distillery come in. When I reached out with this project idea, they were more than happy to not only donate a barrel to me, but they also let me come over and tour their facilities, which was awesome because Cedar Ridge is legitimately my wife's and my favorite whiskey. Now, I've never done a project with a whiskey barrel before, so I really had no idea what I was getting into, but the guys over at Cedar Ridge were super helpful and gave me some tips that definitely helped me along the way. The barrel that they gave me just happened to be fresh off the line and it was just end of its life, so that means a couple of things. First, the staves still have a ton of moisture in them, so the barrel's heavier than it normally would be, and all the hoops are going to be extra tight. Second, the barrel looks used, which is something I was really excited about. I wanted a little bit of patina and some stains on it so you can tell it was actually used to make whiskey at one point. I'll have to sand it up a little bit to get rid of some of the bumps and whatnot, but for the most part, I'm going to try to keep this rugged look to it. Third, that also means there's still a little bit of whiskey in the barrel, and if you're thinking, I bet he took the time to drain the whiskey out of the barrel, collect it in a little Tupperware, filter the crap out of it, pour it into a little glass, all so that he could say he tasted whiskey straight out of the barrel, then you'd be right. It was a pretty small volume of whiskey to be sitting there absorbing that charred oak flavor, so I didn't drink the whole glass, but at least I can say I tried it. Getting the hoops off the barrel was actually a lot harder than I thought it was going to be because those staves were so full of moisture. I ended up taking a ratchet strap and really cranking down on it so I could get enough wiggle room to hammer the hoop off. And even then, it was still reluctant to come loose. Before I can do too much, I need to get this thing dried out, so I pried the top head off and I could finally get a look at the state of things inside the barrel. And you can see there's still a good bit of whiskey in there and lots of char that I'm going to have to clean up. And if you can't tell, I am 100% making this up as I go. I don't have any of the right tools or have any idea what I'm doing, but that's not new. I usually have no idea what I'm doing, but that's never stopped me before. I don't know if that's growth mindset or just plain ignorance, but things always seem to work out in the end. Anyways, once I got this thing dried out, the really messy part began. The inside of this barrel is charred, and obviously they do that to add flavor to the whiskey, but if you're making a project like this, it also means that there's going to be charcoal dust everywhere. Initially I tried sanding it up with my orbital sander, but it was just kicking black dust everywhere, so I decided to use this sanding block and do it by hand instead. But I don't think it really matters. No matter how you sand this barrel down, your hands are going to look like this afterwards.
I think I'm getting the black lung, Bob.
I got as much sanded down as I could, but to save myself a little effort, I decided to try sealing in the rest of the char with some cheap epoxy. I only bought one little bottle of it, and I only did one layer, but it did have the desired effect in the end. Now I can at least touch the inside of the barrel without getting my hands completely covered in black dust. Another issue I ran into was that the barrel heads were pretty floppy. None of the boards were actually glued together, and since I need them to be sturdy for this shelf to work, I decided to take them apart and glue them back together. While that glue was setting up, I could get started working on an adapter plate that's going to allow me to adjust the position of the lifting mechanism inside the barrel. I want to make sure that the piston that actually lifts the shelf up is centered inside the barrel, and to do that, I need to be able to adjust the position in every direction. The solution that I came up with was basically to have a plate with 4 slots in it, and then on the bottom head of the barrel to have 4 perpendicular slots, giving me adjustability on both axes at the same time. Now, I went over a dozen different options when it came to the actual lifting mechanism, but in the end, I settled on a TV lift. The upside of going with a TV lift like this is that it moves pretty quickly and it can lift a decent amount of weight, but the downside is that it's a little expensive and it comes with its own control board. One of my goals for this build was to obviously have it lift up and have LEDs and all that cool stuff, but more importantly, I wanted it to look like a regular whiskey barrel when it's collapsed. If I want to ditch the ugly control panel for this TV lift in favor of a discrete button, I'm going to have my work cut out for me reverse engineering the stock electronics, which is definitely right at the limit of my abilities. But if all else fails, this TV lift also comes with a remote, so I could just scrap the whole custom electronics thing in favor of using a remote every time. But again, I want to be able to control the LEDs and the lift all with the same button press. With the adapter plate done, I could then use it to transfer the slots onto the bottom barrel head. These slots should never be seen, so I didn't spend too much time trying to make them look nice. I just drilled a hole for the start and end of each slot and then connected them with a jigsaw. Another benefit of having the slots the way I do is that the head of the lag bolt can actually fit into the slot in the adapter plate, so I can tighten or loosen the bolts from outside the barrel. That way, if I need to recenter the shelf, I don't have to take everything apart just to adjust it. For the actual shelf, I'm making it out of 4/4 white oak, and it's going to be made up of a bottom shelf, an adapter plate at the top, and a decagon pillar sort of thing connecting the two together. I started with the top and bottom by cutting down some 5-inch strips and gluing them into panels that roughly resemble the circles they're going to be. And as soon as I got those panels glued up and clamped down, that's right about where the woodworking portion stopped going smoothly. The pillar is a decagon, so it's made up of 10 strips, and each strip has an 18-degree bevel on each side. I need the pillar to fit over the top of the TV lift, so it's important I get the fence set to the right spot so that the strips are wide enough. I let myself down and asked ChatGPT what to set the fence to, and it said 1 7/8 inches. So I did that, and it didn't fit. It ended up being a bit of a blessing in disguise, because I decided to plane the inner face of each strip down by about 1/2 inch, resulting in an overall smaller pillar that now fits over the TV lift. Well, mostly. Throughout this build, I used several 3D printed jigs to help with alignment, but as I came to find out, 3D printing and woodworking don't always play nicely with each other. With 3D printing, you can be exact, like down to the millimeter, but with woodworking, it's more about meeting the wood where it's at. Wood is inherently not as precise, and the mark of a good woodworker is how well you can adapt and how well you can fix your mistakes. While the 3D printed jigs were definitely helpful, they didn't fit the dimensions of the wood perfectly, which resulted in various gaps and holes that I had to fill later. This project also heavily utilized a router, and I've never been super confident when working with a router, so it was both stressful to rely so heavily on one, and nice to get some more repetitions with it. To cut out the circles, I used a pretty common method of first routing a groove using a circle cutting jig, then removing the offcuts with a jigsaw before coming back through with a flush trim bit to finish up the circle. I also added a 45-degree chamfer to the underside of the adapter plate, but that was just for looks. Next, I routed a track in the bottom of the adapter plate for the LEDs, and my circle cutting jig has holes every 1/4 inch on it, so I was able to make one track and then move the jig over one spot and create another track, which resulted in the perfect width slot for the LEDs and the diffuser strip. The adapter plate is going to mount directly to the TV lift using some M6 bolts, so I used another 3D printed template to mark where those holes needed to go. I needed these holes to be accurate, so in this case the 3D printed template came in handy. I used another 3D printed template to drill all the dowels and screw holes for assembling the shelf and pillar, and it got me pretty close. It wasn't perfect, but nothing a little wood filler can't clean up. I have to say it was pretty satisfying to do a dry fit and see the pillar kind of come together for the first time. Next, I needed a way to run LED wires from inside the barrel to the top of the shelf without having exposed wiring. To do that, I drilled a hole in the adapter plate that will end up inside the pillar and another hole that ends up inside the LED track. Then I flipped over the adapter plate and routed a channel connecting the two holes. And finally, it was time for the most nerve-wracking part of any woodworking project, the glue up. One of the fun things about working with white oak is that it has a terrible tendency to split horribly. Even though I pre-drilled all the holes with the recommended bit size, almost every single pillar strip split. It's nothing a little wood filler can't fix, but it did make routing the hole in the bottom of the pillar a little bit more difficult. Next, I drilled all the holes in the adapter plate that are going to be used to mount the barrel head to it. I may have gone a little overboard here. I don't think I needed 10 bolts to do it, but I think having all those bolts and washers looks kind of cool. One thing I should have done differently is I should have over-drilled the hole sizes more to give myself a little more breathing room when bolting the barrel head into place. I then marked these spots for all the corresponding holes in the barrel head and pre-drilled for some threaded inserts. The assembly process for this whole barrel might be a little over the top, but it was kind of necessary to achieve my goal of making this barrel look as much like a regular barrel as possible. And while there probably was a simpler way to achieve this shelf assembly than using a decagon, I have never been afraid to put way too much faith into wood filler. And even though this shelf probably came out about 50% wood filler, 50% oak, I'm still pretty proud of how it turned out considering this was my first attempt at making something like this. With an initial round of wood filler and sanding done, I was ready to start working on the electronics. I started by installing the LEDs and locking them into place with some hot glue. I'm using a silicone diffuser strip that just friction fits into the slot, and this stuff's awesome because it does a great job of hiding the individual LEDs, and it's super easy to work with. Which brings me to the electronics. I could probably spend an hour talking about all the issues I ran into, but I'll spare you all that and just tell you how I did it while you watch me do some subpar soldering. This entire project runs as a user mod in WLED. WLED is an open source project that allows people to easily create IoT LED projects that can be controlled with Alexa, Home Assistant, or even an app on your phone. It's actually the same project I used to make my walnut and acrylic speakers a few years back. WLED also allows people to write custom integrations that can interact with the GPIO pins, which is exactly what I did here. That way I get all the benefits of WLED like custom animations, IoT control, etc., while still being able to interact with the GPIO pins of my microcontroller. I can also update the firmware over the air, so I don't have to take everything apart to update it. The TV lift has Hall effect sensors inside it that can pulse as the motor is spinning, which I can use to determine how far the lift has moved. I can also use them to determine when the motor has stalled and have the firmware tell the motor to stop moving. Pretty simple, right? Well, with custom hand-soldered reverse-engineered electronics with firmware running as a user mod inside of WLED, it's never quite that simple. In the end, I did mostly get it working. It still has some quirks though, so we'll talk more about that at the end of the video. To finish up the barrel, I sanded everything down a little bit, just enough to remove any bumps or residue, and then I hammered the hoops back into place. As whiskey barrels dry out, they continue to shrink, which means that the hoops get looser and looser and will eventually fall off. To counter this, it's usually recommended that you drive some screws through the hoops to hold them in place. To do that, I picked up some self-tapping screws and drove a few through each hoop. I don't think you need too many here, so I just did enough to make it look good. To finish up the barrel, I used boiled linseed oil. I've never used boiled linseed oil before, so I probably should have used gloves, but it's been a couple days and my fingers haven't fallen off yet, so I think we're okay. I chose it because it can also be used to seal metal and prevent rust. This way I get the dual benefit of sealing both the wood and the metal with a single finish. I tried really hard to be able to use a touch sensor instead of a physical button, so there was nothing visible on the outside of the barrel. But something about the hoops made the touch sensor too inconsistent. So instead I ended up going with a regular metal button instead. Aside from that button, the only other external electronics I needed was for the power cord, which I couldn't really avoid anyways. This hole itself doesn't really get seen anyways, so I just made a simple square with my jigsaw and screwed the power port into place. Assembling the electronics inside the barrel was hard to begin with, and then throwing a camera into the mix made it really fun. This is the best footage I could get, so you're gonna have to just kinda deal with it. I was really hoping to sell plans for this project, but it was such a big project and I haven't yet been able to get the electronics to a place where I'm truly happy with them, so I'm holding off on doing that for now. But let me know in the comments if you liked this project and if you'd like to see me make plans, and I'll be sure to revisit that if that's what the people want. At this point, I have been working on this project for several months in the middle of winter with 2 kids under the age of 3, which means we have contracted every virus and stomach bug under the sun. Needless to say, seeing this barrel finally come together was so satisfying and a perfect excuse for me to go restock on whiskey. And once I got the top installed, I could wiggle the shelf a bit to get it perfectly centered in the barrel before tightening down the mounting bolts and finally calling this project complete. Here is my motorized whiskey cabinet hidden inside of a whiskey barrel. I can control it from a discrete button on the back, the WLED app on my phone, or even Home Assistant and Alexa. Everything about it is configurable from the closing position and opening height to the LED animations. I honestly couldn't be happier with how the pillar turned out too. I think it looks amazing, and the only thing I would change is to maybe add some hooks to hang some whiskey glasses at the top. I also would love to be able to sell plans for this project, but I want this to be a project that anyone can do, and I've been making electronics projects for 6 years now, and this project kicked my ass. But I think the difficulty of this project is part of the reason I'm so proud of how it turned out. I love the stains on the barrel and the patinaed look on the hoops, and I love that I can open it and close it with just a single button, and obviously the fact that it hides all my whiskey from my thirstier friends. In the end, I am super proud of this project, and if you guys liked it too, then make sure to give it a like or drop a comment down below with any improvements you have in mind. If you like this kind of content, then go ahead and subscribe to my channel so you can see more projects like this. Lastly, I want to give a huge thank you to Cedar Ridge for not only donating a barrel, but also making some damn good whiskey, both of which made this project possible. Now how the hell am I going to convince my wife to let me keep it?